very, very interesting article here by Whitney Webb titled Alleged Salas Family Assailant Previously Worked for U.S./Israeli Intelligence League Firm. And again, um, Salas, Judge Esther Salas, 4 days before this person, Roy Den Hollander, allegedly went to her home, murdered her her only child, critically wounded her husband. 4 days before that, she was assigned a case linked to Jeffrey Epstein in Deutsche Bank, and it's been reported by Whitney Webb and others that Jeffrey Epstein was linked to Israeli intelligence, and now we have this alleged gunman with alleged links to Israeli intelligence-linked firms. So, the alleged gunman who killed the son of Esther Salas, the judge recently assigned to the Epstein Deutsche Bank case, worked for a company of corporate spies and mercenaries with ties to intelligence and also to Deutsche Bank. And of a lot of coincidences there, right? For there not to be some smoke with so much fire, if you will. The news of the shooting of the husband and son of Esther Salas, the judge recently assigned to oversee the Jeffrey Epstein Deutsche Bank case, caused shock and confusion while also bringing renewed scrutiny to the Epstein scandal just a week after Epstein's main co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell was denied bail in a separate case. The case Salas is set to oversee is a class action lawsuit brought by Deutsche Bank investors who allege that Deutsche Bank failed to properly monitor customers that the bank itself deemed to be high risk, including, among others, the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The case came after the New York State Department of Financial Services had settled with Deutsche Bank over the bank's failures to cut ties with Epstein-linked accounts, resulting in Deutsche Bank paying a $150 million fine. Deutsche Bank, unlike other financial institutions, failed to close all of its accounts linked to Epstein until less than a month prior to his arrest last year, even though the bank had identified him as high risk years before, because they don't give a shit. They just want to make as much money as they can from whoever they can. Beyond the tragedy of Sunday's shooting, which claimed the life of Salas' only child, the quick discovery of the death of the main suspect, Roy Den Hollander, of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head before he could be arrested or questioned by authorities, has led to speculation that there is more to the official narrative of the crime than meets the eye. Indeed. With law enforcement sources now claiming that Esther Salas was not the intended target of the attack, and some media reports now suggesting that Den Hollander's motive was related to his dislike of feminism, which was kind of reported in the CNN article I covered about his death yesterday, it appears there are efforts underway to distance Sunday's tragic shooting from Salas' recent assignment to the Epstein case, again, which occurred just 4 days before the tragic shooting. Lots of coincidences here, wouldn't you say? The most likely reason for any such damage control effort lies in the fact that both U.S. law enforcement investigations and mainstream media reports have consistently downplayed the connection of Jeffrey Epstein's sexual trafficking and financial crimes to intelligence agencies in the U.S. and Israel. Similarly, Roy Den Hollander previously worked for a New York firm. Has been described as private CIA with ties to those countries' intelligence agencies and also ties to Deutsche Bank. I mean, damn. According to his website, Den Hollander once worked for Kroll Associates' Moscow office, where he managed and upgraded Kroll's delivery of intelligence and security in the former Soviet Union from 1999 to 2000. A few years prior, Kroll had won a considerable bid from the Russian government to locate money allegedly spirited out of the country by the directors of the state enterprise when they realized that privatization was inevitable. The Kroll executives in charge of the Russian portfolio prior to Den Hollander were E. Norbert Garrett, a former CIA station chief in Cairo and Kuwait, and Joseph Rossetti, former chief security for IBM. During that period and prior to his hiring at Kroll, Den Hollander worked as a lawyer in Russia regarding the legal business issues including international financing and marketing, and married a Russian woman he met during his time there he subsequently claimed was part of the Russian mafia. Founded by Jules Kroll in 1972, Kroll Associates would later become known as the CIA of Wall Street and Wall Street's private eye, and was allegedly to be an actual front for the CIA by French intelligence agencies, according to WAPO. Part of the reason for this nickname, which was once a boasting point for top Kroll executives, owes to the fact that the firm frequently hired former CIA and FBI officers as well as former members of MI6 and Mossad, which is Israeli intelligence. K2 Intelligence, the successor to Kroll Associates, founded by Jules Kroll and his son Jeremy in 2009, has similar hiring practices, counting former FBI and NSA officials among his ranks, alongside his former high-ranking members of the Israeli Defense Force (IDF) and Shin Bet, Israel's domestic intelligence agency. Kroll also boasted ties to the Bush family, with Jonathan Bush, George Bush's senior brother, serving on its corporate advisory board, and Kroll was employed by Bill Clinton's first presidential campaign. I mean, look at all this. Though it is mainly involved in corporate security investigations, Kroll has frequently investigated targets of Washington's foreign policy, including Saddam Hussein, and was also the company tapped to reorganize Enron in 2002. Kroll Associates has also been a subject of scrutiny for those that question the official narrative on the attacks of September 11th. Given that the company was put in charge of security for the World Trade Center complex from 1993 bombing up to the 2001 attacks, and has no shortage of ties to companies and individuals that profited from the attacks. Wow. Kroll itself expressed a surge in business following the events of 9/11, a day when its top executives all avoided going to work despite ostensibly providing security for the complex. Wow, Jesus. A similar surge in business for Kroll followed 2003 invasion of Iraq after the company's investigation of Saddam Hussein and the Ba'ath Party finances have been used as partial justification for the military incursion. I mean, so just super tied into the military-industrial complex. It looks like hiring a lot of former FBI, CIA people, former Mossad, MI6 as well. Aside from Kroll's own role as a private intelligence firm, it's also worth pointing out that Jules Kroll had an odd meeting with Robert Jesus, look at this. With Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, shortly before his death, allegedly by most Maxwell biographers and his family to have been a homicide. Roughly 2 weeks before his death, Kroll met with Maxwell at New York's Hemsley Palace Hotel. According to a 1992 article in Vanity Fair, Maxwell had ushered Kroll and two other men out onto the patio so their conversation could not be overheard or bugged, with Maxwell allegedly seeking to hire Kroll to uncover people out to get him, to destroy his empire, to cripple him financially, and to destroy his life and business in any way they could. This article further notes that the meeting broke up with Maxwell promising that he would send Kroll what he called a memorandum of suspicious and unexplained events. Maxwell was working on this compendium, said the anonymous participant in the meeting, when he met his death. Kroll Associates was never formally hired. Much more recently, Kroll came under scrutiny after being hired by disgraced media mogul Harvey Weinstein alongside the private Mossad for hire firm Black Cube. Weinstein had been instructed to hire Black Cube by Ehud Barak, the former Israeli military intelligence head and Israeli prime minister with close ties to Jeffrey Epstein and a frequent visitor of Epstein's residence. Wow. Weinstein hired Kroll to harass and cyberstalk women who accused him of sexual assault. Weinstein was a one-time business partner of Jeffrey Epstein, and the testimony of Epstein victim Maria Farmer strongly implies that Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein shared women, potentially underage girls, with the film producer. The Daily Beast later reported that Epstein had used his ties to Weinstein to impress and recruit potential victims, and at least one of those victims landed in a role in a film produced by Weinstein and a Weinstein company due to Epstein's ties. Wow. Jesus. In addition, this is really well reported in a research article, my goodness. In addition to Kroll's longtime executive vice president of operations, Jack Bucknam, was previously chief advisor to former FBI director Louis Freeh, and is now CEO of the Freeh Group. Freeh has since become notorious for having been hired by Epstein associate lawyer Alan Dershowitz to investigate the Epstein scandal. Was also involved in the cover-up of the Penn State child Penn State child molestation and abuse scandal. Free involved in the cover-up was also directed to the FBI when the Bureau declined to investigate accusations regarding Leslie Wexner, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Jeffrey Epstein and their involvement in child sex trafficking of minors, first reported to the FBI by Maria Farmer in 1996. Kroll Deutsche Bank revolving door, created a credit rating agency, a field he had called just years before a heck of a racket named Kroll Bond Rating Agency. The firm was envisioned by Kroll as a credit rating agency on steroids, but has failed to make a dent in the market. Shares of the so-called Big Three, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, Investor Services, and Fitch Ratings. KBRA has managed to be profitable and to have produced something of a revolving door between its senior management and Deutsche Bank executives. And again, this Kroll Associates, this alleged person, this Roy Den Hollander, had worked for them previously. While there may not be the biggest credit rating agency, KBRA analysts and executives frequently speak to media outlets where they comment on the state of various businesses, Deutsche Bank among them. Given the amount of overlap between Deutsche Bank and KBRA, it's unsurprising that KBRA is lobbied on the press on Deutsche's behalf. Epstein's links to Deutsche Bank go back decades, potentially earlier. After working for Bear Stearns earlier in his career and then so-called financial bounty hunter with ties to intelligence like armed dealers on Wall Street, Epstein set up a Ponzi scheme with Steve Hoffenberg called Tower Financial, which collapsed in 1993 and subsequently landed Hoffenberg 20 years in prison. Epstein's name, despite being a clear co-conspirator, was suspiciously dropped from the case during the trial. You wonder why? Probably because his intelligence ties. Hoffenberg subsequently alleged that Epstein used his ill-gotten gains from Tower Financial alongside a series of suspect loans to Deutsche Bank to create his investment company. Hoffenberg subsequently told the Observer the following: his lead bank is Deutsche Bank, Germany, that runs the lead on his financial trust company. They run the platform and the trading of the currencies for Epstein with Epstein. He never disclosed to the investors that provided the money to Deutsche Bank his true legacy, that's securities fraud. Wow. Following that point, Epstein's financial activities, aside from Deutsche Bank, enabled investment vehicle were publicly conducted through Bear Stearns until its 2008 collapse in JP Morgan. When JP Morgan dropped Epstein as a client, he again returned to Deutsche Bank. 2013, becoming a client of the bank's private wealth division in New York. Anti-money laundering compliance officers at the bank branches in New York and Florida subsequently flagged Epstein's accounts in 2015 and 2016 and again in 2019, creating suspicious activity reports regarding the movements of large amounts of funds tied to Epstein-linked accounts outside the U.S. Excuse me. However, the bank did not terminate the relationship with Epstein until 2019, just a few weeks prior to his arrest last year, believed to have dozens of accounts. The narrative emerging that Den Hollander was motivated to kill Esther Salas' husband and sons due to his hatred of feminism is a rapid attempt to explain away a story that clearly warrants further investigation, for sure, albeit into avenues that mainstream media and powerful individuals in the public and private sectors remain untouched. As the heinous act targeting the Salas family shown, individuals with a lot to lose are willing to go to the farthest extremes to keep the ties to the Epstein, to the financial sector, and to intelligence out of the sight and out of mind. Indeed, just last December, Epstein's personal banker at Deutsche Bank, Thomas Bowers, the chief of Deutsche Bank's private wealth management division in New York from 2012 to 2015, was found dead in his home. His death was quickly ruled a suicide by hanging. Bowers had also signed off on unorthodox loans, not just for Epstein, but Donald Trump, who has his own ties to the Epstein scandal. While some have been quick to point that Trump, as well as his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, could stand to lose from potential revelations in the Epstein-Deutsche Bank trial, there are other key power brokers tied to the Epstein and Deutsche Bank who could be also feeling the heat. For instance, Lynn Foster de Rothschild, who became close to Epstein in early 1990s, subsequently connected him to Clinton, White House, and later to Alan Dershowitz, is ultimately involved in the Deutsche Bank microfinance consortium. Aside from Epstein's use of money, Deutsche Bank has been notorious for years as a cesspool of money laundering and organized crime networks, paying $14.5 billion in fines in just 7 years for official acts taken against the bank by several governments. It's highly likely that the brutality of what happens outside the Salas family home on Sunday is more related to Deutsche Bank than Epstein, as numerous powerful individuals has ties to the embattled bank. Even the recent move by Attorney General William Barr to move SDNY District Attorney Jeffrey Berman from his post appears to be more related to Berman's efforts to investigate Deutsche Bank than Epstein's scandal, as some have alleged. This is because Barr's new pick for Berman's old job counts Deutsche Bank among his former clients and notably defended the bank in the recent anti-money laundering probe, whereas Berman was investigating the bank, albeit for political reasons that took aim at the bank's dealings with Trump. While Epstein's egregious and criminal actions targeting minors have now become public knowledge, his role in facilitating white-collar crime, money laundering, and financial frauds on behalf of corporations, governments, and oligarchs remains sorely undercovered, despite his role in such activities preceding and continuing after his involvement in an intelligence-linked sexual blackmail operation. It arguably remains one of the key components of the Epstein scandal, yet the most poorly understood and most underinvestigated. If anything, the tragic events in the Salas family home on Sunday, what appears to be a very rapid yet shoddy cover-up of the shooter's ties to Kroll associates and actual motives, reveal that Epstein's financial ties are more frightening to certain powerful individuals and institutions than his trove of sexual blackmail. Wow. Link this article in the description box down below, but Whitney Webb's characterization of, the mainstream media just trying to make it a closed and shut case, that, this individual, Roy Den Hollander, was just acting out, alone without going into his ties to Deutsche Bank and Kroll Associates and all that stuff. Definitely seems like she was pointing out, it's worth further investigation because there are a lot of really shady coincidences and backstory here that would warrant that. What do you think? Share in the comment section down below. Peace. Much